Hasn't it been a really interesting China Business Summit so far? I really enjoyed the positive sentiment and the real focus on opportunities. I just think it's been fantastic. I hope you have as well. Kia ora tātou, ko Taranaki te Maunga, ko Pātea te Awa, ko Chris Metcalfe aho, and as was just introduced, new Regional Director for New Zealand Trade and Enterprise to Greater China. New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, we place a lot of effort in our purpose to grow New Zealand companies bigger, better, faster for the good of New Zealand. And we adore watching New Zealand companies grow, and it's a real pleasure to have some of those companies on stage with us today. And the Prime Minister and the Chinese Ambassador both spoke about choppy waters this morning, but they also spoke about opportunities. Then Todd Trade-McClay came on board, as he always does, and spoke about unbridled opportunity. And then we got to hear from some of our most iconic companies. Dan, it was great to share time with him on the mission recently, speaking about narrow, deep, niche. Jason talking about being invigorated by the solution-based, can-do attitude of their partners. Richard speaking about how they're taking Kiwi ingredients, adding value, and then making it to the taste of the Chinese. Now, our panel today doesn't share the same scale as these, but you all know that we are a nation of great sailors, and choppy seas is exactly what these people are navigating. We all know that calm seas don't make great sailors, and these people are becoming great sailors. So, we're going to talk a little bit today around opportunities that they've taken. We're going to talk about opportunities that they've missed, the lessons learned from those, and we are going to talk about opportunities that we see moving forward. So, without further ado, I will go about introducing our panellists, and if they could just give 30 seconds or so on each of yourselves. So, Mahara, would you like to kick off, please?
Kia ora, Daja Hao. So Mahara, I'm the CEO of MitoQ. So MitoQ is a breakthrough supplement company. We're founded on mitochondrial and cellular science. And we're really challenging this notion that aging means decline. And we do this by focusing on the root source of good health, which is right in your cells. Now, we export to over 100 countries, and our single largest market is China, where we operate through the cross-border e-commerce channel.
Hi everyone, Karyna from EnPot. EnPot is deep modulation technology for primary aluminium production. So I'm aware that many of you won't know what that means. For 130 years, aluminium has been made the same way in big industrial-sized pots. Temperature must stay between 950 and 970 degrees. Otherwise, if it gets too hot, you could tap out that pot. If it gets too cold, you will freeze the pot. Either way, catastrophic. EnPot is a shell heat exchanger that wraps around the outside of the pot, enabling you to dial up 30%, down 30% without affecting that critical heat balance required to make aluminium. So operationally, it means that you, when energy is expensive, make less aluminium. When it's cheap, make more. However, as we transition through to a world of renewable, intermittent green renewables, smelters traditionally haven't been able to adopt that technology. With EnPot, they can.
Kia ora koutou katoa. I'm Nick Hammond. I'm CEO and co-founder of Spring Sheep Milk Co. So we're New Zealand's leading sheep milk company, and we take product all the way from our own breed of sheep called the Zealandia, which produce about 5 to 10 times more milk than a normal sheep, and we go all the way through farms infrastructure in New Zealand, all the way through to our own brands in China. We recently received registration to take our infant formula to the China market, which has been incredibly exciting for the business. We're the fastest growing agribusiness last year, and we just almost got to double the export revenues this year close. So been an incredible journey, but it's also fantastic to be here today to celebrate some of the opportunities in China, which has been so important to the Spring Sheep journey.
Thank you very much. And what I really like about this panel that we have today is they're all serving a real need in China. There's a real need for them. They understand that there's a need, and they're getting really, really good at solving that need. So I'm going to start off with the bold moves first, some of the opportunities taken. And Karyna, you said just entering China was the boldest move. It was ahead of schedule. It wasn't something you were planning. But I guess what gave you the confidence to go ahead? Tell us about it.
Yeah, definitely China is the bold move. So 230 aluminium smelters in the world, half of them are in China. So China is the global aluminium powerhouse. A few years back, we had made a strategic decision that we would get a few more runs on the board before entering China for a number of reasons. Next thing you know, we are being called into a stock standard meeting with China. We believed it was just a small entry-level chat. Next thing you know, on the screen there's just 60-odd faces jumping up. Some of them had multiple people around that board table, and they were some of the biggest companies that we could potentially be dealing with in China. Slight few problems. Number one was we did not have a technical translator. We get technical pretty quick, can go awry pretty quickly, and it did. Worse than that, we didn't actually have a translator. So, and we had no presentation in Chinese either. So, huge disaster. Thankfully, we have rectified all those relationships, and we have subsequently built a very strong partnership with China Hongqiao Group, which is Weiqiao. They've just installed our equipment, and the learning from that is just never underestimate what you're entering into. We had to put our big boy pants on, make an executive call. Our strategy has changed. China is pulling us there. China needs the solution, and we, at that point, chose to open our arms up and walk into China in a loving embrace, and since then we've been creating those partnerships. When we look to install our equipment, we will never have 100 people on site. We need those partnerships with the companies to do that. We will never do the ducting in New Zealand and ship it. None of that makes sense. We will need to have ducting companies over there that we're working with, and basic EPCs and EPCMs. Again, in the Western world, Bechtel, Worley, Hatch, China's different. We need our own partnerships there. So the opportunity, whilst we got it very wrong the first time, we have somewhat redeemed ourselves.
So partnerships there.
Partnership.
And Nick, I'll go to you now. And one of the things we've been talking about today as well is data and how we look at data about China, but you actually need to get a bit more granular. So if there's the big one there, we can say, child birth rate is going down, and you're going into infant formula. How and how are you making it succeed?
Yeah, unfortunately, only 40 million children that we could sell our product to. So, yeah. But it's really interesting that when you go into a market like that, it's not a matter of trying to be a little bit to a huge number of consumers like that. It's about being very meaningful to a small number. And so for us, really deeply understanding our consumer proposition, their journey, how we can be meaningful and impactful to that has been our journey in concentration. I'd also say that the toolbox we have as smaller companies and as New Zealand authentic brands has just expanded significantly. We're fortunate, and thank you to Jenny Cameron for your amazing work on the grass-fed accreditation. We hosted a group on one of our family supplier farms this week, and about 30 key opinion leaders. And I started doing my speech, and my little girl, who's about just turned 4, walks out of the group and jumps up to Daddy for a cuddle mid-speech. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Looked up, and there's this wall of cameras. One of my team then said, Nick, one of those cameras had 1 million people on you. And so what I want to sort of acknowledge is that understanding your consumer, but then the tools to engage and tell that authentic story are just so much more powerful than they've ever been. I think that's a real powerful opportunity for New Zealand businesses coming into China.
Yeah, it's the filing clerk, right, that we just talked about. You know, we can fill that hole with some of the digital tools that we have. Yeah,
absolutely.
Excellent. Mahara, you talked a lot about, so I got the chance to talk a lot to these people beforehand, and Mahara spoke a lot about listening carefully. They've done a rebrand around the world, and listening to Chinese consumers was a part of that. It's not always the way. If you're looking at a global, you're not listening to all of your consumers. With you did, and it formed part of the idea. Can you talk a little bit around?
Yeah, absolutely. So we launched the rebrand in 2022, and a couple of kind of insights to feed into this. On Taobao, there is over approximately 80,000 supplement products that exist out there, and at the time, if you look across them, they all look the same. They're beige, they kind of have the same pastel colours, clean labels, cylindrical bottles, it all just look the same. And when we spoke to our Chinese consumers, and what we started to hear about our brand was this notion of black tech, this notion of premiumness, and the importance of the unboxing experience. So we took all of that, and fed that into our brand design. So instead of pastel neutral colours, we went black. Instead of cylindrical, we've got our own patented angular bottle. And our unboxing experience is actually inspired by the iPhone experience of unboxing. And that there now has actually massively differentiated us in a crowded category. And interestingly now, kind of 3 years post, set the cues for others in the category. So we've just got to keep moving forward.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Thank you. I'm going to move now on to some of the things that probably haven't gone to plan, because when we go to China, or any market for that matter, it doesn't always go to plan, right? Nick, you said not having a team on the ground early was perhaps one of the biggest missteps. What changed when you did get a team on the ground, and how are you looking to move that forward?
Yeah, I think like a lot of companies pre-COVID, we would sort of occasionally send people up to China and kind of dip our toes. When I stepped into the CEO role, the first thing I did was establish a team on the ground in China, and David Boyle from PCNZ was phenomenally supportive of that process. What really changed for us, though, was that in a market like China, you need to be immersed in it. To see the opportunities, to build on them, you need to have that immersion factor. And by having a team on the ground, it meant that we got that really up to date. Feedback and could take opportunities as they came through. It was also a very big signal to potential partners that we're here for the long term. So as opposed to just coming up occasionally, they knew that we'd got an office, that we had a team established up there, that we were committed to the market. And what I'd say is that New Zealand has such a huge opportunity in this space because there are so many people in China who are super talented and have a passion for New Zealand. So I have a team up in China, all of them are born Chinese nationals, have lived there their whole lives, but if you ask them, they'd say that they're a Kiwi.
How many have we got now?
We've got 5 up there at the moment, soon to be 20. But what I'd say is there's a huge opportunity for any New Zealand company to engage that passion to take you forwards. And the other piece is you've just got to get on planes as well as a leader. So I was a little bit shocked when I walked up to New Zealand the other day and the lady said, "Good evening, Mr. Hammond," before I'd given her my passport. And so you do need to get on the plane and do that bit of work. But it's not actually that far. If you fall asleep on the plane, it's only a 3-hour flight.
Maybe you can, if you've got any tips for falling asleep on the plane, you can let people know after. Mahara, you mentioned you were late to the Douyin party, so TikTok in China, Douyin. How did that impact you? What did you do to catch up?
Yeah, I think we've used an analogy that we were last passengers to get on the bullet train as it left the station. So I think I want to talk almost a bit about China speed. I think we've heard, I heard this a few years ago and I was like, I get it, but how? Now I'm not going to stand up here and pretend like we've got it all right, but to me there are 3 key things that we needed to work on and improve in terms of getting closer to China speed. Leadership and governance, people and culture, and our enabler functions. Leadership and governance is that you have to lead. It has to come from me, from the board, the mandate to actually act at speed and embrace the risk that comes from it. If you don't have that, it's going to create conflict with your team. So that to me is a foundational one that you need to get in place. Number 2 is your people and your culture. You've got to put people in the markets. We've done that. We've put people in each of the markets. Importantly also, we actually have Chinese nationals in our teams in New Zealand. Don't underestimate the literal and contextual time lost in translation. So you've really got to be able to speed that up. And we also did a lot of what we call shifting the centre of gravity. So people have to realise New Zealand's in service of the market, not the market in service of New Zealand. The third one we did was we did a lot of work with our partners, suppliers, enabling functions in New Zealand. So we've done a huge amount around just literally speeding up our time to market, NPD, supply chain, kind of all of these sorts of things around. And we got quite granular and have just been progressively working through how do we actually shorten those time frames.
Gee, it sounds like you've got that really clear in your mind. It says
Yeah, after the fact.
Yeah, after the fact. Yeah, really interesting. We did spend a bit of time talking about the different horizons as well and the risk appetite, and you may choose to talk about that later. But for now, Karyna, one story that came up from Karyna was, hey, you ended up in an early meeting where you obviously had no translation. You very quickly learnt the scale of China. Can you give some insights to these sort of starting growing pains that you had there in China?
Well, yeah, sure. The precursor to that is probably nothing happens quickly in the aluminium industry. So then you enter China, and we're dealing with China speed. Now we are working and we're installed on a company called Weichao, and their internal joke is there is China speed, and then there is Weichao speed. So we've got all these things happening, and we're just really just put the seatbelt on and trying to keep, give it everything we can and get in there. But I guess the big learning there was just be mindful of that risk, be open to changing that strategy when you need to, when you are being pulled somewhere, and don't let that risk disable you. And so, like I said, we've walked into China with arms open wide, and the opportunity just keeps coming from that. So we've just, a couple of weeks ago, signed a collaboration agreement with Siemens Energy China. Their conversation around that was, hang on a minute, you're telling me that an aluminium smelter can be a flexible energy user and provide demand-side response. Well, hang on a minute, we've got a whole heap of smart energy solutions either side of that are only enabled because of the EnPot technology. So the conversations are coming at China pace, and we are ready to move with those partners at China pace, but definitely a different pace to what the aluminium world is currently operating with.
We've seemed to have gone straight to sort of China speed, and Nick, you spoke, just gave us, you've got 5 now, and then you said we're going soon to be 20, so that sounds China speed. You spoke about speed as well. Karyna, have you got local staff working for you?
Yeah, we've got a few local staff there, but China is also just one jurisdiction, so we are working with smelters in and outside of China. So we are a small dynamic team, and we speak about partnerships. I cannot tell you how valuable the NZTE partnership has been to our company. When we are operating under multiple jurisdictions, and even just looking at China alone, Peter Crisp and the team, I don't believe you'll get a stronger voice than you do from EnPot, so thank you very much.
No, thank you. And a pleasure. Do you have something you want to say, Mahara? No, you're good? So what's coming next? So the opportunities you've taken, we've looked at the opportunities that maybe that you missed, that you've had to rectify. What's coming next for you? Mahara, you spoke a little bit about the ageing population. What does that mean for you? What are the shifts that you're looking to make with MitoQ as you move towards the future that probably or possibly can give insights to this crowd here and what they might be thinking about as well?
Sure. So I'll talk about the opportunity, kind of how to find the white space and then the execution of it. So we heard a lot about kind of healthy aging and what have you. I think just to step back, look, there's 3 massive drivers that are coming in. One is the demographics, like 400 million Chinese are going to be over 65 in 20 years. The consumer trends changing, much, much more focused on health. And then the third is the government has the Healthy China 2030 policy. So you've got 3 massive forces in there, demographics, consumers and government, all pushing towards healthier people as they age. The second question is, with all of that in mind, how do you find a point of difference? And the only answer, in my opinion, here is you've got to go deep. And you've got to go very, very, very deep. And that includes things like you've got to get close to your data. Places like Douyin, Red, like there is an abundance of data. And so you need to find the right way and the right capabilities to get in. Second is you've got to actually work with your local teams to understand how to interpret the data, because it can also be very, very misinterpreted if you don't actually have the right context around it. And then the third is around how you execute against it. Look, I know there's a lot of kind of talk about people playing in different places, but I think, to me, thoughtful, aggressive moves are the only way in which you can actually move forward at pace. I mean, it was Ayrton Senna, the Formula One driver, who said, you can't pass 15 cars in the dry, but you can in the wet. Like, I think that with everything that's happening now, you have to move at speed. Too tactical, I completely agree with what Nick said around get your content engine up, and then as you got to think about the ecosystem of your channels, because they're not very singular, they act synergistically together.
I just wanted to add another thing that came up when we were speaking, Mahara. You spoke about, and this might be a little controversial, but you said you said, I wonder how a lot of people say they want to understand China and they get information and they do their reading about China, but how much do they really get under the hood? How much do they really want to understand China and the Chinese consumer? Do you want to add anything to that? Or
Yeah, look, I think the fundamental thing is that you've got to be genuinely curious. I have seen, and this may be the controversy, I've seen a lot of very experienced kind of leaders, not top tier, but a lot actually, probably who have kind of gone then going, yeah, I get that. I did this in Australia. There's no difference here. I did this in America. I did this somewhere else. It's fine. And they completely miss the mark. You've genuinely got to be humble to actually listen and be truly curious. Otherwise, you're going to miss the boat entirely, in my opinion.
or maybe, do you want to say add something?
Yeah, I just
there?
want to just echo that. And I think there's lots of ways you can find that insight. And while data is one element, I drive my team nuts because if we drive past a store with our product in, we pull over. And some of the best insights I've had has been sitting with a store owner selling our product, having a tea, and just trying to understand their perspective on our brand. I can sit there for hours talking, and they're usually very passionate about it. But there's nothing that substitutes that deep understanding of insight. And I think your commentary around you've got to be relentlessly curious about that is very true.
We'll stick with you then. So Mahara spoke a little bit about the aging society. Obviously, there's a path of least resistance at the moment because it sits in the healthy China space. I'm sure you're sort of sitting in that space where people are thinking about nutrition, they're thinking about health in China deeply. What are you thinking about as you move into the future? What are the opportunities?
Yeah, we've launched a what we call a mid-seniors range already, and Chris, please don't ask me if you're a mid-senior. I would hate to have to answer that question. But it has been really successful. But what I'd say is, like any of these sort of bigger demographic things, it doesn't immediately mean success by going into them. Scale of opportunity doesn't mean that you're going to capture it. And also, it's not like they're very obvious. I mean, every single dairy company in the world can see that opportunity and everyone's leaning into it. So again, it comes at that same mindset of going, what is our really unique differentiator? What is our right to play in that space? How can we actually win in that space? And again, for us, it's coming down to being very, very clear about who our targeting consumer is. I do think there's a huge opportunity there. For us, it has been in that nutrition, health, wellness, immunity space. And then how do we engage with those consumers? What we didn't realize was, and why you've got to, even if you're operating in China, take a full step back before you look at a new consumer group. Live streaming for that group is at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning. And I was like, why? Who's up at 4 or 5 a.m.? And, at my age, that's a nightmare to be up at 4 or 5 a.m., but that's actually the perfect time.
Your consumer is, right?
Yeah, for our consumer, that's the perfect sort of time. And I think that evolves a lot. I think the other big one that we've noted has been the pet nutrition space. And when I first told our farmers, one of our new initiatives is to go into pet nutrition, there's kind of this stunned silence. Nick, we're an infant formula company, why would we even talk about pet nutrition? But what we've seen is a humanization of that relationship with pets. We've seen China go way past the 100 million pet mark. There's huge growth in there. And so one of our highest value products is actually a pet nutrition format of essentially pet infant formula. And so you sort of have to drop a lot of the sort of cultural barriers you may unwittingly be carrying into a market like that, and to see those opportunities, then how do you actually connect with that consumer becomes a big question.
And you've made me think a little bit, because one thing I've noticed in the 3 years that I've been there is Chinese people, unlike Western people, we get sick, we take medicine. Chinese people treat food as a type of medicine, so what you eat, right, and it's almost preventative. And you spoke about, am I a mid-senior? I mean, the truth is that they're starting to manage their old age from really early on. In China, so I can understand that it's a big market for you. Path of least resistance we spoke about, decarbonisation, China net zero is a big thing, so it's least resistance for you, Karyna. What's the current you're trying to catch there, or the wave that you're trying to catch there?
Yeah, the opportunity is definitely China aluminium. So, like I said, 60% of the world's aluminium is produced in China. 80% of that is with coal-fired generation, so that equates to around that 5% of China's total emissions. Now, the 14th five-year plan specifically pulls out aluminium as a global priority, a national priority, and there are some very, very ambitious goals. One of them is they've got some capacity caps on existing. There's others that you will see aluminium smelters decommission and relocate more to the Yunnan province, where's hydro domination. As we see here in New Zealand, whilst it's lovely green aluminium, it's not foolproof. When there's no water in the dam, you come unstuck very quickly. And that's another great play for EnPot. An EnPot-enabled smelter dealing with no water in the dam would simply turn that production down. So you could be looking at, say, 100 million to install an EnPot system, return on investments anywhere between 9 months and 4 years. Now, that all comes down to the contractuals between the energy company and the aluminium smelter. So obviously, if they are being paid for demand-side response, that's of huge value to them, and you can see where the EnPot opportunity lies, because we are the world leaders in flexible production for aluminium smelters. So they are moving smelters, they are turning, moving towards the green energy, and we will be right beside them, moving with them, and to enable that decarb of the aluminium sector in China.
Yeah, thank you, Karyna. And we did speak a little bit about, so we've spoken about carbon net zero, we've spoken about healthy China. The government in China sets out these lines. You can follow them, you can see the provincial governments aligned to them, the agencies all aligned to them, and so it becomes much easier when you're working aligned to what the government set out. We're coming close to time. I would love just some final remarks from each of you. I'll probably start with Nick at the end and we'll come back down this way. Just, if you're entering China for the first time today, what are you doing differently? And what do you recommend for those that are thinking about it or are looking to double down or go in a different direction?
Yeah, I think a few key things for me. One is just around immersion in the market. So really finding a way to make sure you understand what's going on there. Second theme is around, which is linked to that, is finding the talented, passionate Kiwis who are in China to take you along that journey. I think the third piece would be that do not underestimate how fantastic the New Zealand network is. NZT's phenomenal, as well as stepping stones like PCNZ. There's also a community of business people, and it's actually, despite the size of China and the trade, it's actually quite a small community, but it's a community of people who have been there themselves. And I think there's a huge amount of rich experience there that you can get from stepping into that community, engaging with it, and learning as much as you can.
Thanks, Nick. Oh, yeah, Karyna?
Yeah, no, totally agree with that. We obviously had to make some quick moves to get Chinese-speaking nationals who are still aluminium experts, so a lot of process engineers, a lot of software engineers, and we are still building out that team and will continue to do so. But I guess we are still very much entering China today. It is very fresh, it's very new, and we are giving it a red-hot go. I'd love to be in a position to come back here and be on the stage in 5 years' time, and after we've made a significant dent in the decarbonisation of the aluminium industry in China, and then be able to revert back to you on how we could have done it differently, the wins and the losses.
And I just love this case study here. And I think it goes to something that Mahara said on a call. He said, actually, we have to have the courage to go out and be case studies ourselves as businesses. And so, it's great to hear what you're doing, but you're not working in food and beverage like the great majority.
I'll even be here.
So it's just great to hear your case study as it goes on. I'd love to be back here in 5 years with you. Mahara, last comment.
So I'd kind of share two things, and one of them, Chris, you alluded to earlier. I think, so years and years and years ago, there was a classic kind of strategy book which called The Alchemy of Growth, and it talked about these third horizon bets that you need to place. These are small kind of emerging ones. No one knows if they're going to play out or not, but your job is to place a lot of those bets and figure out what comes off. I think that's more important than ever in China because it moves so fast that those third horizon bets are going to be your business next year. So I think that's a really important skill to get to. I think the second thing, and I have this kind of conceptual rule of thumb where you've got to be uncomfortably bold. So I think you've got to I think about it, you've got to go to the point where you think you're being bold, and then you've got to keep going to the point where you're uncomfortable, and then you've got to take about 3 more steps. And if you do that, then you're probably in the realms of being bold and differentiated in China.
Right, with that, everyone, you've heard it here first. You must be extremely bold, and even 3 steps further. So, thank you very much for to the panelists. You've all got very different case studies. You've all been able to bring something different. There's stuff that we hear over and over. It's always good to be reminded of the things that we need to be thinking about, because if you're not in market, it's very hard to think about it when you haven't got that context around you all the time. So from listening deeply to moving boldly, you've spoken about how your experiences have been. Thank you for sharing so openly. I encourage, over coffee and things, for anybody to approach the panel here. I would like to say one last thing. I've just moved to Shanghai, and I think we've got something quite unique in Shanghai, something that we don't have around the world. We've got this ecosystem of businesses that are up there, that are openly sharing, working together. We've got PCNZ with David Boyle, and they share and they work together, they collaborate. BRIC, and we've worked really well, MFAT, NZTE, MPI, Customs, and I think we've got something great up there. We've got New Zealand Central up there. We're doing some incredible things, and I encourage, we talk a lot about it on the mission. We said we need to collaborate more. We're already doing it, but there's more blood on that stone. So let's give it a go. Pleasure to be up here with you 3 and in front of you all. Thank you.